Alright guys, welcome to the channel. If you have been following us for a little while now, this is actually around probably a year ago since I started first uploading videos onto YouTube. So pretty exciting. Thank you everyone that has followed along for that time, or even if you're recent, thank you for checking us out and supporting the channel. In light of it being about a year since we first started uploading, we're actually going to be introducing a new series to the channel, and this is the first episode. So the series is going to be called Back on the Bench. And primarily it's just going to be trees that are featured on the channel in previous years or in previous episodes of videos. We're going to be bringing them back onto the channel and doing some progress work on them, maybe just some maintenance work, maybe eventually some restylings and things like that. But I thought it'd be good for you guys to be able to not just see a tree once and never see it again and see what's happening with the tree. I want you guys to be able to follow along with the work that we're doing, particularly on trees like this white spruce that we have here. We did a big transformation in spring, basically a big wire job, big style, big prune. It was very, very overgrown, and I'll put a link up somewhere here so that you guys can check it out if you haven't seen it already. And then in autumn, we did a repot on it, which was super successful. And you may be thinking an autumn repot, that's not ideal, but you can see that with the right timing, right techniques, and right aftercare, and the right environment and climate, autumn repotting is definitely doable. And we went pretty hard on this as well. It came out of a much bigger pot into something much more shallower and smaller. So we were able to do a fair bit of work on it and get it into this pot and still have it really healthy. But I won't go into that too much. Like I said, if you want to check that video out, I would have posted a link somewhere, either on the screen here or down below in the description. So basically for this Back on the Bench episode, the first one of the series, which I'm super excited, and I hope you guys are excited to be able to follow along with the trees. We got a few more trees coming into end of spring, early summer. Now's the perfect time to be doing your pruning, particularly on your conifers. Most of your deciduous, they would have already been pruned somewhat, whether it's just maintenance pruning or maybe something a little bit harder. For the first episode, I'm excited to bring back this spruce. So with spruce and cedars as well, and this is a spruce that we're working on today, but this timing and technique is going to be the same for your cedars as well. And basically with these species, you only get one flush of growth per year. So we've let it flush out over spring. And generally the last couple of weeks of spring, first couple of weeks of summer is an ideal time to then go through and do your first and only prune of the season on these species. So the reason that we do it at this time of the year is that because we're not getting a second flush of growth, we need to allow enough time for the buds to set for the next spring's growth. So by doing it at this time of year, you basically allow all of summer, all of autumn to be able to build up the strength and the back budding and for the tree to create all of the buds that it needs to then go into spring next season nice and healthy and strong. Basically all we're going to do today is we're just going to be cutting back all of the new growth, and as we cut back we may get the branch cutters out and start to push that back in a little bit more, because as you may be able to see, if you can't right now, I will bring you in a little bit closer and show you a little bit more detail of all the branches and the back budding that has occurred on this tree. And again, you would have seen a lot of those buds in autumn from the last video. So basically a similar process to what we did in the video, in that we did a spring prune, the buds all set, and so come autumn you have all of these buds set throughout the whole tree. And again, if you haven't seen the video, go and check it out, because you can see exactly what the buds looked like in autumn after that spring prune, and basically what we're going to be replicating on the tree again this year. Like I said, we may get the branch cutters out and start to push it back a little bit more and start to utilize some of those buds and that back budding and that fresh growth in closer to the trunk. But for now, I'm just basically going to be going through all of the fresh growth, pruning that back, and then we may take a little bit more of a detailed look at the tree and just see what we can cut back to. Now, in terms of actual technique of this prune, we don't want to cut all of the fresh growth off. We have to be mindful of the overall size and shape of the silhouette. This is basically where I envision the tree silhouette to sort of be in terms of size and shape and width and things like that. So if we were to allow these new fresh growth to elongate even more, what that means is that the silhouette pushes out too far, and then we have to try and push it back constantly. And because we only get one flush of growth, we really only have one chance to set up pushing that growth back. By doing the work now and cutting back maybe a little bit more than we think the overall shape of the silhouette and size of the silhouette should be, we do need to do this, because then come spring next year, it's just going to flush out again. It's going to elongate that a little bit more. So if we don't cut back in hard enough, then if the spring growth is here this season, we don't cut back hard enough, well then it's going to end out here. We don't cut back hard enough, it's going to end out here, and we just keep on elongating that silhouette, which is not what we want. Particularly on a tree this size, it's pretty much like I said, got the silhouette size almost exactly where I want it. We just need it to fill out more, and we need some branches in behind the outside of the silhouette. I'm gonna bring you in a little bit closer. We're gonna go through the whole tree. I'll show you some instances of where we cut back to. Like I said, we don't cut all of the new growth back. On all of the, I guess, lighter colored growth, which is that new growth, that fresh growth, we wanna cut back probably until there's maybe, again, it depends on how big that extension is, but we do want to leave just a small amount of that new growth there once we prune it. And again, I'm going to bring you in closer, so it's going to make a lot more sense, and I'll explain it a little bit better. What that means is you're going to get basically like I'm going to say 80 to 95% chance of buds forming at that cut site on that new growth. If we go back into last year's growth, so the darker needles and the more hardened branching, you're probably dropping that down to maybe 50% chance of getting new buds forming on that location. And then if we go back even further into older growth and thicker branching and things like that, you're really dropping that down to quite a low percentage. So by doing this work now, we ensure that we're pushing the growth back, we're getting buds form in that location, and then hopefully a bifurcation rather than just one long extension. So like I said, we're gonna go through it in a little bit more detail, show you some close-ups, gonna get the shears out and actually prune the whole tree. We'll have a look at it before and then after the work done, and then we'll explain a little bit more as well. So there's a lot of growth on here, so it's gonna take me a little bit of time, so I'm gonna get stuck into it. I'm gonna bring you in closer. We're gonna have a look in detail at exactly where and how to cut it. Make sure your shears are sharp, as always, clean and sharp. If that cut isn't sharp and precise, then you may not get the budding that you want at that cut site. So make sure they're clean and sharp, and you'll have a really good chance of ensuring that you get budding in that location. So I have a piece of foliage here just to help make things really clear about where we're cutting and what we're cutting. So this is last season's growth, and this is this season's growth. So you can see the difference in color, nice and vibrant, whereas this is that darker sort of green. Really, what we're trying to do on this particular prune is prune this lighter section here. So I spoke about percentages earlier. We have like a much higher percentage, I would probably say 80 to 95% chance of getting buds at our cut site in this year's growth. We can prune anywhere along here, but ideally you want to try and prune as close to where this bud originated from in this season. If you have something further back on your primary branches that you want to extend, or you want to get a little bit thicker, you can still come in and probably prune, maybe here, or maybe halfway down that extension. However, if you really want to start building ramification in closer to the trunk, making it much more compact and much tighter, you can come down to basically about here. So you can see that I'm about maybe just under a centimeter that I'm coming into, going in between the needles to cut as well. So I haven't cut any of the needles around there. That's the sort of amount of new growth I like to leave when making this cut. So I've got another piece here, exactly the same scenario, last year's growth and then this year's growth. So for something with this sort of length on it, it's fairly developed, it's growing pretty strong and pretty hard. To get in between the needles, try to keep your shears or scissors closed And then as you get in between the needles, you can sort of push them out of the way a little bit, and then open your scissors once you're in close. Bang, make that cut. You can see we're about a centimeter, just under a centimeter of growth left. None of the needles are cut. You're not going to miss all of the needles every time you make these cuts, but the less sort of browning you can get when doing this pruning is going to be best for the overall aesthetic. It's not going to hurt the tree if you cut through some needles and it browns off a little bit. It's not going to do anything, but just for good practice and a good mentality going into these prunings, it's always best to try and do it as cleanly as possible. And again, when I make that cut, I'm not doing it on an angle. I'm getting it in there nice and flat and just making a really nice, flat, clean cut. We will then have buds form at that cut location, or even sometimes a little bit further back. We may even get some buds further back into last year's growth, or even further, you know, maybe into some really old growth. Now, as I'm going through as well, spruces have a really big growth tendency to cluster in the same area. So generally with like a 3-prong piece of growth, so we have 1, 2, 3 pieces of growth coming out of exactly the same area. We always want to cut back to pairs. If it's 3 or 4 pieces of growth coming out of that section, or buds developing in that section, try and get rid of it, because it's not going to be necessary for the overall aesthetic and design of the tree. We really have to come back to pairs wherever possible. Another thing that we can do while we're doing this work as well is any bar branching or branches or pieces of growth that are coming out directly opposite each other, we can start to reduce those. So we want to go from left, right, left, right, left, right, all the way through the branch structure. So if we have something that's coming out directly opposite another piece of growth or another branch or another bud, then we can start to reduce that at this stage as well. This one in particular, we don't actually need. We have a branch here that's already in that position on that right-hand side. So we can remove that and let this one develop. This one might take over this, or this might take over this, but for now we don't need to make that decision. Same as we move down a little bit closer to the end of the branch, we have a new bud forming here. We don't need that at all because we have this one to replace it. It's too close. And then we can also remove this one in here, if I can get in there with my shears. So now we go left, right, maybe this one eventually, and then we go back into the left, or the right, sorry. So now we go left, right, left eventually, right, left. We can get rid of this one here. And then as we're working our way through the branch, we're starting to increase a better design and a better structure in the branch itself. So we have another great example of pushing back to new, better growth in this branch here. So this piece out here has just extended way too long for the overall design of the tree. You can sort of see the pad coming in around here nicely. This extends a little bit too far, so we just take that out, and we then start to create a better pad. So I thought I'd pause here and just take a look through the tree. I've pruned pretty much half of this side. Still a little bit in apex to go, but I thought I would give you a good comparison of the work that we're doing and how it looked before while still on the tree. So you can see that it's thinned it out quite a bit. There's still some vibrant color in here. There's still some new growth in here, but it's much cleaner and looks much neater on this side than the other side. So we're not taking out massive chunks of foliage. We're keeping the tree really healthy in terms of keeping as much foliage on there as possible. What that means is the more foliage on there, the healthier the tree, the more back budding we get, and the stronger the buds that are produced after doing this type of pruning. This still needs a little bit of a clean. We've taken off a little bit, but like I said, it's not too much, but you can see the difference between this side that hasn't been pruned yet, and I've pretty much gone through this whole side and pruned at least the very exterior of the tree. I've left some interior pieces throughout basically this whole side of the tree, just to allow them to elongate. We want them to either replace more external branches or fill in space in the pad structure and the branch structure. So we don't want to prune those completely out or even prune the tips off them because they need a lot more growing to do, but it also keeps the tree healthy. I'm going to finish the other side of the tree. We're going to clean it all up. After this type of work is also a good time to go through and do a little bit of like detail wiring, some of the new growth or some growth that was too young to wire last time. We can come through and start to wire that. I won't bother doing that in the video. It's gonna roughly look the same. It's just putting some minor details and minor sort of placement of branches and foliage, and it's not necessary to this particular video, but I will eventually do that over the next couple of weeks when I get a chance. But I didn't want to miss out on the timing of doing this work. This was pretty important to get done now before it gets too late in the season and it doesn't have time to develop the buds for next spring. With that being said, I'm going to get onto the other side of the tree. We'll come back once it's all done and we'll see how it looks. Alrighty, so here we have the tree all pruned and ready for the rest of the season. There's a few sections that I'm going to bring you in and take a closer look at, and they're basically areas of the tree that we have good branching to cut back to, particularly down lower and sometimes higher in the tree. So we want to have good branch structure out here and keep a nice silhouette and a nice line on that pad, but we also don't want things to get too strong up in the top of the tree. So by pruning back into strong buds and strong growth that is a little bit closer to the trunk is ideal for any type of pruning work, particularly on something that really only has the single flush during the season. I'm going to bring you in and we'll have a look at that and we'll have a quick sort of discussion about that. But otherwise, this is the tree all done. I'll give you a little bit of a spin here. It does make a little bit of noise, so I'm not spinning while I'm talking, but I'll turn the volume down as it creaks as we turn it. So on that spin, you might have had a keen eye and seen some areas that we can cut back to. If not, we're going to go through a few of those now. We're going to clean up the rest of it, and any places that I deem necessary to cut back a little bit further, we'll take it back out into the gallery, give it a water. It's a 30-degree day today, so want to get it nice and watered, especially after a prune like this, and then yeah, it's set for the rest of the season. So here we have our lowest, most directional point of the tree. We have this branch that sort of spirals all the way down here. From here all the way out to here, there's not much taper, but we have good branches to cut back to. So we have a couple of options in this instance. So what we can do is this section right here is definitely not necessary. So we can start by just removing that. And then we're basically cutting back to these two nice new buds here. The next branch behind that we look at is actually pretty strong as well. So this is a potential to either take a risk and we go back to some of the older wood and maybe try and build something off of that, build some buds and some ramification out of that branch and let this sort of extend out. The other option that we actually have is we have this branch here, which is quite thin and young. However, this branch here is a good candidate to actually come in and be the new leader of that branch. So we start to get better taper in through here, and we can get some, I guess, better movement in through it as well. So in this instance, I'm actually going to take out this whole branch here, and then this starts to become the new leader. It'll basically sit in this position, then allows us to bring this around a little bit more. This can come in and fill that position, and then this starts to come around. And we start to get a much nicer pad structure, much better, more efficient branch structure as well. And there are a few instances where we can do that throughout the tree. I'll take you up a little bit higher. So we've now moved about halfway, a little bit above halfway through the tree, up closer into the apex, and we are looking at this branch here. So we have a really nice bud all the way back here that we can start to work off of. And when you look at it from the side view, this is the branch here, starts to extend out a little bit too far, whereas if we can start to step that up a little bit in closer to the trunk, that's a good way to then start building better ramification in closer to the tree. And we can see that this is the side of the tree. It's actually really not doing much harm in terms of the overall silhouette of the tree. Now, that was this branch here, and then we can come back down into this one here. Pretty much exact same scenario. It extends too far out. We have good buds directly behind that extension, so we can cut that and we start to build off of these two buds here. The next instance is probably the one right here, so we can cut back a little bit more on that. Needs a little bit of wiring to sit in position, and again, same on here. We're just cutting back into some better growth, not letting it extend too far, and really just starting to build a more compact, better silhouette. Now, from the apex, again, this is the side of the tree, but as we move our way down, we're starting to get a much better tapered look to the tree, which is ideal in your conifers. So here we have the final product of the spruce, and a reminder that this technique and timing really does work for spruce and for cedars as well. So if you have any of those in your collection and they're at the point where you're trying to refine them and not just develop them, then now is a really good time to do this pruning technique. As always, thank you guys for watching and checking out the video. We'll have more back on the bench episodes coming soon, particularly due to the time of year where a lot of this work is required on some previous projects. So again, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.